It was late summer in Scottsdale, Arizona. The kind of dry, desert heat that clung to your skin even after sundown. The streets of East McDowell Road were quieter than usual that night. Most residents in this part of town were winding down inside their air-conditioned homes, far removed from the gritty hum of downtown Phoenix, just 20 minutes away. For 33-year-old Darius Greene, the evening was routine. He had left his job at a body shop in Tempe, stopped at a Circle K gas station on Scottsdale Road to grab a bottle of Gatorade, and was headed back to his small rented apartment near Hayden and Thomas. Darius had grown used to the stares in this predominantly white neighborhood. He was one of the few black men living there, and even after 2 years, he still felt like an outsider. People locked their car doors when he crossed the parking lot. Neighbors avoided eye contact. To most of them, he was simply the wrong kind of man in the wrong place. But on August 14th, 2012, that unspoken prejudice would harden into something far more sinister. At 9:47 p.m., Scottsdale police received a frantic 911 call from Linda Mallory, a 36-year-old woman living in a gated townhouse community off North Granite Reef Road. Through broken sobs, she told dispatch she had been attacked outside her home while taking trash to the dumpster. He was tall, black, maybe 6 feet, maybe more, she cried. He grabbed me. He touched me. He tried to, oh God, he wouldn't let me go. Within minutes, squad cars swarmed the neighborhood. Helicopter searchlights cut across manicured lawns and palm trees. Neighbors peeked out from behind blinds as officers canvassed the streets with K-9 units. And less than 2 hours later, Darius Greene was face down on the hot asphalt of a cutie parking lot on McDowell, his hands cuffed behind his back. The police claimed he fit the description. A black man, medium to tall build, wearing dark clothes. That was all it took. Darius tried to explain. He had just come from work. He had his time card, his Circle K receipt, his mechanic's shirt still stained with grease. But the officers weren't interested. One leaned in and muttered, "We got you now." By morning, the local papers already had their headline. Scottsdale woman assaulted in gated complex, suspect in custody. No mention that the suspect had never been arrested before. No mention that evidence was thin. In the eyes of the suburb, the crime was solved. The days that followed revealed just how shallow the investigation truly was. Linda Mallory gave her statement at Scottsdale PD headquarters. She described the attacker as having dark skin, wide shoulders, and a deep voice. She insisted she could never forget his eyes. But what the police left out of their report was that Linda also mentioned something strange. The attacker's skin tone looked patchy, almost like makeup. She even said she thought she saw something smudge when he grabbed her. That detail never made it into the official report. Detectives didn't canvass surveillance footage from the gated community. They didn't interview neighbors who reported seeing a white man in a hoodie loitering near the dumpsters earlier that night. Instead, they focused solely on Darius. A lineup was arranged. Linda was shown 5 photographs. 4 were mugshots of men with criminal records. The 5th was Darius's freshly taken booking photo. Exhausted, his eyes red from sleeplessness, he stood out immediately. Linda pointed to him within seconds. "That's him," she said. Case closed, at least in the eyes of the police. But the reality was chilling. The real assailant was a white man named Kyle Merrick, a drifter with a history of voyeurism and petty theft. Merrick had disguised himself with a store-bought skin-darkening cream and gloves to pass as a black man, knowing full well the police and community would swallow the stereotype whole. And they did. For Darius, life became a nightmare. By the time Darius's case went to trial in late 2013, the narrative had already been written for him. The Scottsdale Tribune ran headlines like, "Predator in Paradise Valley? Local mechanic charged with sexual assault." In court, the prosecution painted a picture of a dangerous man lurking in an otherwise safe community. They showed jurors photos of the gated townhouse complex, its pristine walkways and palm trees, and asked them to imagine the horror this woman felt as she was attacked. But when it came to evidence, the case was paper thin. There was no DNA, no fingerprints, no fibers, not a single piece of physical evidence tied Darius to the alleged assault. The prosecution leaned entirely on eyewitness identification. Linda Mallory sat in the witness box, her hands trembling as she pointed across the courtroom. "That's him," she whispered, her eyes locking on Darius. The defense attorney, a public defender named Martin Klein, tried to dismantle the testimony. "Ms. Mallory," he said, "you initially told detectives you thought the man's skin looked smeared, almost like makeup. Isn't that true?" Linda hesitated. I don't remember saying that." Klein pressed on. "Isn't it possible that what you saw was a disguise?" The prosecutor immediately objected, and the judge sustained. The line of questioning was dropped. The defense tried to introduce Darius's alibi, that he was at Circle K buying a drink minutes before the assault was reported. But the surveillance footage from that gas station had already been misplaced by Scottsdale PD. The receipt timestamp? Dismissed as irrelevant. All the while, Darius sat at the defense table, his hands folded, his face calm, but his chest heavy with disbelief. He kept thinking, this isn't happening. They can't do this to me. Not when I didn't do anything. But prejudice had already poisoned the well. The jury, 10 white men and women, 1 Hispanic man, and 1 white woman, deliberated for less than 5 hours. On the second day, they returned with their verdict. We, the jury, find the defendant, Darius Greene, guilty on the charge of sexual assault. The courtroom erupted. Linda sobbed into her hands. The prosecutor patted her shoulder. Darius's mother, who had flown in from Houston, wailed so loudly that deputies had to escort her out. Darius himself felt the floor vanish beneath him. His whole body went numb as the judge pronounced the sentence. He is to spend 10 years in Arizona State Prison. Florence Correctional Center sat like a fortress in the desert, surrounded by razor wire and sun-scorched sand. It was a place where hope went to die. For Darius, the first year was the hardest. He was constantly reminded that he didn't belong there. Not because he was innocent, everyone claimed innocence, but because he wasn't built for that world. The gangs tried to recruit him. When he refused, they threatened him. Guards treated him with contempt, calling him predator or the mechanic molester. Word of his conviction spread quickly. In prison, being labeled a sex offender was a mark that could get you killed. He survived by keeping his head down, fixing broken radios and fans for other inmates, and writing letters. He wrote to the Innocence Project. He wrote to civil rights lawyers. He wrote to anyone who would listen. Most letters went unanswered. Nights were the worst. He would lie on his thin cot, staring at the ceiling, replaying the trial in his mind. The shaky testimony. The missing surveillance tape. The way the jury avoided his gaze. They wanted me guilty before I even spoke a word, he thought. Not because of what I did, because of what I looked like and where I lived. Still, he held on his slivers of hope. His younger sister, Aaliyah, visited him faithfully every month. She brought clippings of news articles, updates from attorneys, and the strength of family love. "Hold on, D," she would say through the plexiglass. "We're going to get you out." They can't keep the truth buried forever. But as the years dragged on, truth felt more and more like a distant dream. It wasn't until 2019, 7 years into Darius's sentence, that cracks began to show in the case. A new defense attorney, Rachel Myers, took up his appeal. Unlike his overworked public defender, Rachel had the time and resources to dig deeper. She filed motion after motion for access to the original police reports, forensic evidence, and neighborhood surveillance. What she found was damning. A neighbor's security camera had, in fact, captured a figure near the dumpsters the night of the assault. But the Scottsdale police had dismissed it as unusable. Rachel obtained the footage. Grainy though it was, it showed a man with pale skin adjusting something on his face, a mask or makeup, before slipping into the shadows. Even more shocking was a confession obtained during an unrelated burglary investigation in Tempe. A man named Kyle Merrick, arrested for breaking into cars, bragged to another inmate that he had once framed a black dude for a sexual assault by disguising himself. Rachel connected the dots. Merrick's description matched reports from residents who had seen a suspicious white man lurking in the complex days before the attack. His history of disguises and prowling behavior painted a chilling picture. After months of legal wrangling, the case reached the Arizona Court of Appeals. And in July 2021, After 9 long years behind bars, Darius Greene's conviction was overturned. The court acknowledged serious errors in the original investigation and prosecution, citing failure to pursue exculpatory evidence. Darius walked free, but not before losing nearly a decade of his life. When the gates of Florence Correctional swung open in August 2021, the Arizona heat slapped Darius in the face like an old enemy. He stepped out with a cardboard box of possessions, 2 pairs of prison-issued boots, a stack of letters from his sister, and the same grease-stained mechanic's shirt he'd been arrested in 9 years earlier. His body was leaner, harder, marked with scars from fights he never sought. His hair had gone salt and pepper, and his eyes carried the weight of nearly a decade stolen. Outside the gates, Aaliyah was waiting. She ran into his arms, sobbing into his chest. "You're free, D," she whispered. But as he looked out at the horizon, at the cars rushing down Highway 79, Darius knew she was wrong. He wasn't free. Not really. The world had moved on without him. Smartphones, self-driving cars, entire neighborhoods had changed. Employers didn't want to hire an ex-convict, even one exonerated. When he applied for jobs at auto shops, they gave polite smiles and never called back. Landlords turned him away. Strangers Googled his name and saw the old headlines. Predator in Paradise Valley. Mechanic convicted of assault. No one bothered to read the correction years later. Every night, he walked the streets of Scottsdale, retracing the steps of his nightmare. Down McDowell Road, past the Circle K where his receipt had been ignored, past the gated complex on Granite Reef where his life had been stolen. He would stand at the dumpsters, staring into the dark, imagining the white man in disguise laughing as police dragged him away. The more he thought about it, the more his anger grew. Not just at Kyle Merrick, who was never formally tried for Linda's assault, but at the police. It was the detectives who ignored the smudged makeup. It was the officers who misplaced surveillance footage. It was the system that fed a jury exactly what they wanted, a black man to blame. 9 years, 9 birthdays, 9 Christmases, 9 years of missed chances to marry, to raise children, to live free. How could he ever get that back? He began to write again, but these weren't letters for lawyers. They were journals filled with rage. "They stole my life." One entry read, "The police will never stop doing this. Not until someone makes them pay." In late 2022, whispers began to spread in Maricopa County. 2 Scottsdale police officers were found dead in separate incidents, each staged to look like accidents. One, a detective, was discovered slumped over the wheel of his car near Indian School Road. The other, a patrol officer, was found drowned in a canal near Papago Park. Officially, both were ruled accidental. But among officers, suspicion brewed. And in his small, dimly lit apartment off McKellips Road, Darius sat at his kitchen table, staring at the news on his laptop. He didn't smile. He didn't frown. He simply whispered to himself. Justice comes in many forms. He was methodical, patient. He never left traces. Years of prison life had taught him how to study people, how to bide his time, how to live in shadows. No one suspected him. Not yet. To the public, he was just another exonerated man trying to rebuild his life. But inside, he had declared a silent war. The vow came one night when he stood on the overpass at Loop 101, watching police cruisers speed below. The desert air was dry, the neon lights of Scottsdale flickering in the distance. He thought of Linda Mallory, who had pointed at him without hesitation. He thought of the prosecutor who smiled when the guilty verdict was read. He thought of the officers who told him, "We got you now." He closed his eyes, the roar of traffic beneath him, and whispered a promise to the night. "They will feel what I felt, every one of them. Until my last breath, I will make sure police never forget my name." It wasn't a vow shouted in anger. It was spoken with chilling calm, the kind that only comes from a man who has lost everything and has nothing left to fear. By 2023, his story was known across Arizona. Civil rights groups hailed him as a symbol of racial injustice. Documentaries picked up his case, detailing how a shallow investigation had stolen 9 years of his life. Students at ASU studied his trial as an example of systemic failure. But there was another story running quietly beneath the headlines. Scottsdale officers began to whisper his name with unease. Some believed he was watching them. Others swore they saw him on empty streets late at night, standing still under the glow of a street lamp, only to vanish when they blinked. He became a legend, a cautionary tale of what happens when justice isn't just blind, but biased. And while no court could ever repay him for what was lost, Darius didn't seek money or apologies or public sympathy. He sought something darker, something permanent, a reckoning.